Alhamdulillah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Hope everybody's doing well. Inshallah, another beautiful day here in my city of Coventry. And today we've got a very interesting topic. It's something different, brothers and sisters, but of course it's still related to our religion, and it's a form of da'wah, of calling people to the truth of Islam. So, Alhamdulillah, today we've got like I said, a brother with us today, Brother Mustafa, and we'll be talking about cloaks and daggers, and it's a very interesting topic, and I'm hoping that we have a good interaction with our Muslim brethren and our non-Muslim viewers, and they are most welcome to join in. And about 45 minutes or so through the stream, I'll probably put the link, and people will be able to come on and share their thoughts. So, Brother Mustafa, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yeah, we've got a very interesting topic, as I mentioned, and the term cloaks and daggers. It's very interesting, and for those brothers and sisters who are not aware, or the term regarding cloaks and daggers, it's a very kind of like a conspiracy type kind of title. And throughout the stages, especially through 2022, we've seen so many governments and prime ministers and presidents fall and be established at the same time for some political game. As we know, here in the UK, we're going through an economic, financial recession. I would say it's been happening for a number of years, and we've got to understand that the people who are put up on our screens are multi-million, if not billionaires. Majority of the people who are in the Houses of Parliament, or who are in, if you ever watched Q&A of Prime Minister's time, and we got people like, of course, Sunak, who's the current Prime Minister of the United Kingdom right now, and he is actually, be prepared for this shock, brothers and sisters. His value is, and his family in total, is 1.7 billion pounds. This is how much he is valued at. And do you think for 1 second he is going through any type of difficulty as the common folk are? And the narrative that we are told here in the UK, especially living in the West, by the media, who are majority owned by these type of people. But think for a second, brothers and sisters, behind these politicians, there are other peoples. There are other faces that, like I said, cloaks and daggers. There are people behind influencing the choices that these so-called leaders or puppets make. Brother Mustafa, the term cloaks and daggers, can you just maybe also briefly share your thoughts on the title?
Yes, brother, it's a very interesting title that you set forth. Cloaks and daggers is just, in essence, a euphemism of how in the medieval times, particularly, that when one wanted to do an act of aggression, you would have a cloak, and you would often carry a knife with you to secretly do away with your opponent. This was often done in a conspiratorial type of way, in a dark alley. Someone may just take his cloak, which he would cover his whole face and the whole body, and use a dagger, whether that's whatever instrument, a knife, or whichever instrument, to do away with his opponent. So the understanding here on the title of the topic is, these people who control us, as Brother Muhammad has made mention, they're not in reality or in touch with the normal common folk who are struggling to make ends meet in this particular financial climate that we're living in. So in essence, what they are, they're just people who want us rather to follow their ways. To hear that Rishi Sunak's family wealth, including himself, is 1.7 billion pounds. I mean, that's astronomical to even think why, on how they've accumulated that wealth, and why don't they just go and enjoy that wealth rather than working non-stop and trying to influence society. So these people essentially, as I've made mention many times before, they get so bored of their wealth that they want to influence society. And when this influence comes, they want to then mold a society according to their line of thinking and their line of understanding. And this often involves going into the supernatural. Because of the ridiculous wealth that they have, the question is, with such large assets, why would one want to do any type of work whatsoever, particularly a strenuous job such as a prime minister? But they want to influence society, and that influence namely means doing and setting an agenda for society that is contrary to what God has revealed. So here we're seeing in the UK the spread of LGBTQ, feminism, atheism, all these concepts which are alien to people of any particular social standing through history, no matter which religion you have come from. So it's very much a society in which these individuals want us to think like them, to behave like them. And they're often the mouthpieces of the people who make up the policies, the bureaucrats, those who are work on the quiet in behind the scenes, who set governmental policies. It's not for good reason that, and I don't think it's a sheer coincidence that with the appointing of Rishi Sunak as prime minister, that at the same time the Hindutva movement in the Midlands, where Brother Muhammad is, has become quite rampant. And it's not for no reason whatsoever that half of the cabinet, or a good proportion of the cabinet, are from an Indian background. There's a lot of intra-politics which are currently being involved, namely due to the thriving or expanding Indian economy. We're seeing the British, who are particularly interested in trade with India, so they can see many advantages of having the close connection between India and Britain. Hence, you've got a prime minister who, let's face it, it's impossible to believe that such a traditionally conservative party, such as the Conservative Party, who is the leader of, would have possibly even comprehended that electing of a non-Caucasian individual. But he's come on board due to these other factors which are involved, not just from amongst Conservative Party individuals, but namely from esoteric individuals, those same individuals who are related to those who got Barack Obama as the president of the United States. The majority of the white population would have just seen his color and been put off by him. But there are other certain factors who are pressing a new world agenda in order to harmonize people of all different colors and persuasions, so that they could all come under this one world order banner, which is a new moral world order, which we're seeing live in motion. Feminism, atheism, LGBTQ, they're in positions of dominance and power. And these individuals or these secret societies want to make this world a place which is totally contrary to God and establish their particular view of what morality invokes. So one thing that they are propagating is, for example, the crushing of racism, which on the surface appears to be a great thing to do. But the real reasoning behind it is very much to do with Islamic eschatology, which we can elaborate on. But these are some of the points I've just briefly summarized in relation to what we will be speaking about.
Yeah, mashallah, you touched on some very important points. As for the LGBT rights, in 2022, Sunak mentioned that he wants the UK to be the safest and the greatest country in the world for someone to be from the LGBT community. Also, his support for the war in Russia and how behind the scenes, again, this is very important, brothers and sisters, and I really want you to take note to what Brother Mustafa is telling us, is that behind the scenes, behind the cloaks, I should say, that the British military is actually actively involved in Ukraine in supporting Patriot defense missiles, and of course to to work these type of machinery, these type of military instruments, you need British troops. And for a fact, it has been reported in social media that there are special forces from the British military active right now in Ukraine. And we know for a fact after the Iraq war that any type of military action had to be discussed in the Houses of Parliament before any British soldier can set foot in another country. So this is very, very important, brothers and sisters. I'm not trying to scare you guys, but we are actively involved in the war in Russia. And I am very, very surprised that Putin has not really, I think he's fighting with one arm behind his back. So we have to be prepared that majority of the gas and the resources are from Russia. The high rise of gas and electric here in the West is due to this war in Ukraine. Brother Mustafa, are you aware of that?
Yeah, absolutely, brother. I mean, to understand the intricacies of this war in Ukraine, it's absolutely essential for us to understand what are the intricacies. I mean, the Western economies, they rely heavily, as Brother Muhammad has made mention, on the gas supply and electric and energy supplies from Russia. Russia is a vast country with tremendous natural resources. So in order for us to understand the intricacies of this particular situation, which is in Russia, is rather complex, in so that the Western governments are essentially, which are under the influence of the Zionist movement, which is trying to propel all facets of liberalism to the extent that religion and godliness becomes extinct. So the Western governments have been forced to succumb under their grip. And as a result, Russia, for example, stands up for the common values that have been held by people of ethics and religion through history, whether that is Christian, Muslim, Jew, or Jewish, or whichever people hold traditional family values. Russia is strongly supporting that. At the same juncture as well, President Putin, he set about a law which will prohibit the propaganda, the propagandization of LGBTQ activities in Russia, which is the reason why this war is happening. You see, in essence, not only is it to divide Christian amongst Christian, it's also to divide or to augment or to solidify the policies of the West, which are in essence an anti-religion, secular, new code of conduct that they want the whole world to follow. And Russia appears to be a particular obstacle in that way, namely from a Christian background who share those commonalities with Muslims, i.e. the requirement of a family structure with the father at the head of the household, and holding on to the values of what has been ordained in the Bible and in the Quran. I mean, it's not for good reason that Putin speaks very favorably about or to Islam as well. So they're seeking to have this unification between Muslims and Christians, and this is where the Western governments, under the Zionist grip, have enrolled this particular war and festered these animosities between Christian brothers amongst each other. And as a result of this, we're seeing what is happening in Ukraine. This is a matter of more than war, but of ideologies and events that are to occur in reference to eschatological end time matters. This is what it's all propelling towards. As Muslims and Christians, as I've made mention on previous shows, we share similar eschatology. Although we may have differences with mainstream Christendom in terms of their fundamental belief, we do share those commonalities, and there will be a unification between us as well in these end time scenarios. So you can assess that the Russian protocols and their thinking which is very similar to Islam, and they want a unity between the common values that Islam and Christianity share. But Western Christianity, which has been usurped by the Zionist movement, they are now in effect, on full steam ahead. They are going to hit back at anyone who goes against their policies.
You mentioned that, brother, and it's a very good point. I know for the fact that the Orthodox Church there in Russia are quite conservative compared to the churches in this country, which are totally broken down, which they fully fully go ahead with same-sex marriages and whatever. But here, I know for the fact in Russia, they are still very strongly devoted Christians, and they still hold the same type of values as Muslims have. Are you aware of that, Brother Mustafa?
That's right. Those are the points I've normally mentioned to you, brother. I mean, those are the commonalities that we share, and these are some of the alliances which will take place. And now Hadiths mention these things will take place. That's the beauty of the matter, you see. There will be a unification between Muslims and Christians who will, be in conflict with those who are enemies of God's common values. So these are very important points to note.
Yeah, it's interesting, brother, because the fact that, like I said, the title of the Cloaks and Daggers, there are people in power right now who we actually think they actually are in some type of power. But there is a circle of maybe 200 people who dictate to them and in how to run the world and what policies to introduce into society. And we have to, I actually feel like Brother Andrew Tate, I think he mentioned that a year ago, 2 years ago, before he was banned on YouTube. He already told us that there is a matrix system. And I actually think he was from the outer circle, or he had some type of information leaking to him about some of the plots and plans of some of these powerful individuals. How do you feel about that, Brother Mustafa?
Absolutely, Brother Muhammad. You're quite correct in what you're saying in terms of this, the points that Andrew Tate has made, and some of the plots and plans which are being fulfilled. I mean, I'm of a certain opinion that, by him exposing the system that is on, then it's essentially a big danger to himself personally, who is highlighting, exposing these people who are really trying to lead mankind astray. And he's one who has seen the system, seen what it's all about. He makes a fantastic eulogy by stating that for him, whilst he was in his time of Jahiliyyah, he still found something very interesting, in which when he attended these gatherings involving eminent people who are well known throughout the world, eminent pop stars and other such figures, he saw the evil that they were gripped in, all the tremendous rituals that they came under, and all the evils that they were manifested in. So he stated that there must be an opposite to this, and hence there has to be a God, a unique way of looking into the matter.
Absolutely. It's very interesting point. I actually think Elon Musk is the same. I think he's experienced, or maybe he was part of that small group of individuals who tried to influence leaders, countries, and even continents to change hands. And we got to understand that this guy, Elon Musk, is the richest man on the planet. And I think he valued himself as $176.8 billion. Now think about the amount of money this man has got. 176.8 billion US dollars. This is how much his net worth is. And recently, we know he bought Twitter, and Twitter was only worth 10 billion. 10 billion, I imagine that, 10 billion. He actually bought it for 44 billion. And it's interesting now that there's so much leak. That's called the Twitter files, and I think people will sooner or later, if he's not taken out, and he's mentioned it many times, that he stated on his social media outlets that if he dies in his sleep, there's something suspicious going on. Just like Andrew Tate mentioned before, like sooner or later, the 3 strikes. And I think there is a huge pushback now from Elon Musk that regarding the Hunter Biden files, which again are going to maybe show the conspiracy, the propaganda, and how the elections were won in America, which is very, very interesting, brothers and sisters, because I actually think that Elon Musk was part of this Cloaks and Daggers organization. But I think he saw, maybe Allah guided him, and maybe Allah guided him to Islam. I think he saw what was going on, and he left this that kind of the group. What do you think to that, brother Mustafa? Do you think I'm just like making this up? Do you think there's a possibility that he has a lot of information regarding some of these people behind these policies and changing governments?
Absolutely, Brother Muhammad. See, the thing is, which we all need to know, is that when these people get involved with these people who are the powers that be, if you want to call them, essentially speaking, there comes a juncture where even their inner inclinations go against what they are being fed to believe. So it's like an internal battle, which similarly the point Andrew Tate made with himself as well, that you either internally just accept what you're being ordained or required to accept, or your inside speaks to you to speak out against these transgressions. So these particular individuals have some form of, if you want to call it inner inclination, which has led them then to go away from the system that they see, which is endemically corrupt and full of vices, and hence they go to the opposite side. And this is where the realization that wealth and material gains are not everything in life, and that we and that our human consciousness and the inner inclination, it craves for more, and that is where the inclination towards a divine being comes in. And we've seen how Andrew Tate has taken that step, and you never know, with Elon Musk, he can go down that same path as well. And what a victory that would be for Islam, because you'd assume that he will want to investigate further these matters, and this will be a great way to do so. I mean, with Andrew Tate's particular conversion, and as he has become a Muslim, and the influence he has throughout the whole world, being the 3rd most Googled person on earth, you can imagine the following that he has amongst the younger generation, that he in himself could be a walking dawah. He's a walking dawah example to which lots of people can follow his example and hence accept what he has to say. So absolutely, it's very clear that despite whatever material wealth that you have, Allah says in the Quran that you will never find true contentment lest for his remembrance. So it's only in the remembrance of Allah where one finds that true contentment. And despite all this wealth that everybody has, and being involved in high society and seeing how this high society operates, the inner inclination can rebel, and these people can become the best of examples for us to follow, and to relay this information to the masses, that this is the reality of the world that we're living in.
It's very interesting, brothers and sisters, that when these files come out, these Twitter files, and I think this will expose some of these individuals, especially Biden. As we know, we've seen him on TV. Sleepy Joe. He doesn't know where he is. Unfortunately, he's got dementia. He doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know where the bathroom. He doesn't know anything, guys. And he is just a face. And there are people behind him telling him what to do. Camilla, or whatever her name is, the African lady, has anybody seen her? Has anybody seen her? she doesn't say anything. Whenever she's asked a question, she just laughs and finds everything funny. She never really answers a question when something's posed to her. Brothers and sisters, I really want you to focus on what Brother Mustafa is saying here. So, Brother Mustafa, we've spoken before regarding these protocols that these people, we got to find out who these people are. And I actually titled this show previously, naming the book where we received the information from. And I had a lot of people in my YouTube channel commenting to me saying, brother, change your title, because they try to speak the same type of they try to give the same information, and their YouTube channel or their social media was banned or was taken off air. Are you aware of that yourself, brother?
Absolutely, brother. I mean, the particular reference is to a book which every Muslim in particular, should be looking to get hold of, and it's called The Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, a book which has been much maligned by the West in particular, and seen as a fictitious conspiratorial book written in the early part of the 20th century by some Russian authors, which really show and highlight how the Zionists have their protocols, like a stage-by-stage 24-point plan on how to dominate and rule the world. And the very strange and bizarre thing about this book, written over 100 years ago, is its applicability today, and how it makes mention that it seeks to destroy people of religion, how it seeks to show that the mankind should be overwhelmed and overworked in terms of just the desire to earn material wealth. And so many things are mentioned in that 24-point plan that, in fact, the idea on this show was to speak about this particular book and to read it on a consistent basis for our audience. And we could have, and it was a 3-hour, 45-minute YouTube video simply titled An Audio Book of the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. And I was advertising this for the purpose of today's show. But unfortunately, upon advertising this just one channel, which I don't have any affiliation with, when I tried to send the link today to Brother Muhammad, I found out that audio book under the YouTube, which is showing the audio of the particular book titled, it's been now taken down by YouTube, apparently by trying to imply that it's got some hate content. I mean, the channel has been up and running for a number of years, and it's simply an audio reading of the book, The Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. But I was advertising that out to other people to attend today. And before you know it, lo and behold, that individual, whose channel it was, has been taken down, which is absolutely incredible to think. But it was a beautiful 24-point protocols of what the Zionists are up to: empowerment of women, how they've got their secret people. It sounds very much cloak and dagger, as the title of the topic suggests, but these are esoteric people who are in every institution, who are fulfilling and who are expounding every policy of this movement, which is the anti-God movement. It sounds all very conspiratorial, but it's absolutely the case that these people have their agents within every systematic setup of every institution, particularly in the West, and they push forward their policies. They may be few in number, but the numbers that they do have are enough to persuade and to cajole and to manipulate policies of every institution, whether that's the media, economics, banking, everything you can think of, even sport. Everything you can think of, it's infiltrated. We can see the way the recent World Cup, as an example, would be a prime example, where politically inadequate individuals, such as sports personalities, were speaking up vehemently for LGBTQ issues and showing, and really as if they were well trained in what to say by the relevant media organizations, such as the BBC or the ITV. So they were told what to say. So we can see that even though it goes intrinsically against them, so it's very clear that in every institution, if you're living in the West, for example, here in the UK, these individuals have their agents set. And this is what the protocol says. The protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion have
it's very clearly stated that they have their agents within every institution, and they're the ones who are able to get to the positions of authority. And how it usually works, I'll tell you how it works. It's quite bizarre, but it's very, very true. I'd advocate people to watch the film The Scars of Dracula, where, just say, for example, I'll give you a really good example. Just say you go to Holborn and you go to the council where the barristers sit. Now, what happens? Their clerks usually are females, and after a hard day's work, they invite barristers and judges to certain meetings which they can entertain themselves. So after going for their usual drinking session or whatever, afterwards they invite them to certain sessions where judges and barristers can hold seance meetings and delve into the supernatural. So this involves certain rituals that are performed, and then when they see demonic institutes or demonic things taking place by jinns and so forth, this captivates these people in authority. And as I said, they're introduced namely by clerks of a court who would be a female. So they would then show them, certain satanic powers that they can do, these evil jinns. So then what happens in terms of even it can come to the extent that even Iblis himself, who will then attract the top echelons of people, just say, for example, judges or barristers, as I'm speaking about the legal profession, in which they will state how to formulate policies. So, for example, in family courts, it's so esoteric, so corrupt, so kept hush hush that you cannot never ever question the validity of a case taking place, and how fathers particularly are discriminated in matrimonial affairs involving children in particular, and seeing how the system is being set. So this usually happens by for example, the shaitan will say to these people, these judges and people of high authority, that you have to spread or empower the women, to the extent that the man loses the authority in the home. Once the man loses the authority, this is how society will corrupt within itself. It will self-implode within itself. That's why they repealed the Children's Act in 1989, Section 2.1a, which stated that the natural guardian of the family is the father. That was repealed in December 1989, and we know just 20 days later, George W. Bush made his famous New World Order speech that you're either with us or you're against us, meaning they're setting about a new world order. So this is how they formulated their methods and have come to the surface. So in effect, it may sound all very fanciful to a non-Muslim or a non-Christian, but when it comes to our revelation, the Quran, and even in the Bible, Allah does say that there are those who represent shaitan and there are those who are vicegerents of Allah. So how does shaitan then influence and corrupt mankind? How does he attack them from behind them, from above them, from below them, from their sides? Is that he gets these people who have these such individuals who have sold their souls to shaitan. And so we're all, as Muslims, we're all familiar with that. They will cry to shaitan on the day of judgment, and he will say, "Go away from me. I never knew you. I never, compel you to do what you followed me to do. You did so of your own free wish." So these are the people who Allah mentions to the effect that they work day and night to lead mankind astray, because they've sold their souls to shaitan, and they're able to see miraculous things that he may do, and they become bewitched by him. Bewitched means to become so amazed by what they see him doing supernatural things, that they devote themselves to him. This is how shaitan works, you see. We can't, as people who are Muslims or Christians particularly, you can simply not dismiss this is how things operate. So currently, for example, judges and barristers in particular, they come under the grip of clerks, female clerks, who take them for entertainment after a hard day's work. And by that very volition, they enjoy seances or ritualistic magical acts. We've seen people such as Crowther, who was a famous British personalities going back. Leslie, I think his name is Crowther, if I'm not mistaken. So he speaks about the art of black magic that he invoked himself in the middle part of the 20th century. And these are people of considerable influence and value, you see, and they appeal then to the top echelons of society. So I just gave an example of the legal facet in which the satanic forces have now overridden the judiciary in order to empower the women and to crush the men, you see. This is why we've got organizations such as Family Needs Fathers, Fathers for Justice, because fathers are now being crushed. The man is being crushed in society in general. His position is being pushed aside because Shaitan does not want what Allah has revealed, even in the Bible, in the Quran, that the man has the authority. They're determined to crush this, and this is some of the examples that you can see in which the methodology that these people use to try to lead mankind astray.
MashaAllah, well said, brother. We're going to have a short break, brothers and sisters, maybe for a minute or so. But I am just going to play a short reminder to continue to support the channel, to like and subscribe, and share it on your social media outlets. So, guys, please hit the subscribe button. Barakallah feekum. Yeah, alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh to everybody. I just wanted to play that short clip just to remind the brothers and sisters. Also, I want to give a big shout out to our brothers and from EA Dawa, Brother Khalil, Brother Friendly Muslim, and all the brothers connected to EA Dawa. MashaAllah, your streams are incredible. I really enjoy them. And for those brothers and sisters who have not subscribed to EA Dawa, you're going to be surprised. You're going to be shocked with some of the content. MashaAllah, I was watching this morning and how our brother Friendly Muslim was dealing with some of the hotheads and so forth. I definitely recommend brothers and sisters to watch today's or early last night's show. It's about 4 hours long, but it's well worth it, brothers and sisters. So yeah, big shout out to our brothers and sisters from EA Dawa. Also, I want to mention that I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump or Sleepy Joe Biden. Also, I'm not a supporter of Boris Johnson or Sunak or the president of Ukraine or Putin, Russia. I am just relaying the facts to you guys that the media are very selective in what they inform the masses. But I do feel that the tide is turning. I actually feel that the fact that international media gives the population of the world two sides of the story. And we have to think about how much hatred is thrown at China. And what countries have China invaded over the last 15 years or so. So we've got and also Russia. I'm not saying Russia is clean. I'm not saying they are involved in proxy wars and get involved. But we have to understand that the narrative that we are told on social media, YouTube, Facebook, and other than that. And I think Twitter will change. I think, inshallah, Twitter will change. And once these files are leaked out and in the hand of journalists, and I actually think individuals like Sky News, CNN, Fox News are really, really scared in exposing the truth regarding the elections that took place with Sleepy Joe Biden and the Orange Army, Donald Trump. Brother Mustafa, are you back?
Yes, brother, I'm here.
Yeah, I just gave a bit of a monologue there. I just wanted to make it clear to the brothers and sisters, I'm not a supporter of any organization or policies, foreign or local or national policies. I think the UK and the West are in for a shock. I think this is the beginning of the end. I will not be surprised if there will be some type of all-out war. I won't be surprised if the threat of nuclear weapons, the use of nuclear weapons, is not far at hand, far away from, in the next couple of years. I will not be surprised. And this is some of the plans and the plots of the people who behind the scenes, behind the cloaks, have these type of ideas. And they think that they will, survive. They will dig themselves a bunker and so forth, and supply themselves with whatever they need. But as for the masses, the common folk like us guys, we are just cannon fodder, and we actually are, through our taxes, paying them to survive or live. Do you think Sunak is worried about paying his gas bill or his electric bill? Do you think he's concerned about anything? Hell no, he doesn't care, because we are, the population, are the ones who are paying for everything. So, Brother Mustafa, have you got anything to say to what I just mentioned?
Absolutely. Just to enhance on Brother Muhammad's very good point, is the fact that the royal family, they're the same cloth and the same cloth and kin as an example of Rishi Sunak. Inundated with so much wealth, I mean, they're hardly concerned about the average Joe or how he's going to pay his gas or electric bill. These people are living in a different world, and we are feeding them. We are essentially paying our taxes and giving money towards these people who are just essentially filling their own pockets, living in their own dream world, and formulating their policies, which are totally against what we intrinsically believe in. It's just a mad system that is just going hell for leather in leading, mankind astray. And as you've quite clearly mentioned, I mean, this does appear to be the beginning of the end for the West. But the people who are pushing that, who are accentuating that, are in fact the Zionists. They want to, they're not happy with Christians or Muslims. Let's get this fact straight and clear, absolutely right now. They see both as enemies to them, to their plans, because we hold common values and we share common morality with Christians in particular. And for this very method, they want to, as they've created their anarchy in the Middle East with the events which have happened in the Middle East, in Iraq, in Syria, setting the format out for a destruction of the Muslim lands. The same thing they're doing now in Ukraine as well. So they're the ones who want the end of the West, and only those of considerable intellect can understand this point. You see, whilst they, there's a particular interview I will never forget on YouTube, featuring a Jewish rabbi by the name of A.B. Finkelstein, who appears on a Christian radio station based in the deep south of the US. He himself is based in New York, and he very clearly, although rather tongue-in-cheek, mentions that whilst those who have Jesus as their common denominator, we make them fight each other whilst we pocket in the shekels. This is on YouTube. This is one of the very first video, interestingly, I watched when I got a smartphone on YouTube. And what he said just resonates in entirety. It's because, again, we based our understanding that as Muslims and Christians, that the end times, we are fast approaching towards them. And we can see that anyone who doubts this, they just have to look around themselves, seeing what the situation was like a generation ago, and seeing what the situation is like now. Seeing that things such as LGBTQ are being rammed down our throats, that our youth, young age in schools are being compelled to learn about it. Muslim kids are coming home to their parents and saying, "Oh, what's wrong with being gay?" These things are all being institutionalized in the precipice of an anti-God system, which will be rampant, you see, by the time our following generations follow. And it's at this juncture that these future eschatological events will happen, and the Zionists are plotting and planning for that particular event to occur, i.e. the return of Isa alayhi salam, Imam Mahdi, Muslim Christian unification, making conflict and throwing people into anarchy and fighting amongst each other. This is what they're all plotting and planning for, you see. So we need to be fully aware of this. And the beauty of our religion, Islamic religion, is that this is for Christians in particularly to consider. is that, and I've made mention of this several times in the past, it's incumbent upon you, if there are any Christians listening or who will listen to this, that they investigate Islamic eschatology. The reason being, for one nominal reason, and that is Christians are also expecting the return of Jesus, upon whom be peace. This hasn't materialized. It's been 2,000 years since he was on this earth. The Bible, unfortunately, gave some indication within its very first book, the book of Thessalonians, that he would return within the lifetime of his disciples, like a thief coming in the night. This is explicit to 1 Thessalonians. And it didn't happen. So Christians have lost their faith, and as a result of this, they don't even know when this is happening. But our Muslim eschatology, Islamic eschatology, is quite precise on what the setting will be. So we've spoken about this on plenty of shows before, the unification between LGBTQ, atheism and feminism, in conjunction with other tricks that they're playing, which I'll be going off on a tangent if I elaborate on that. But you can see these alliances coming together, unlike any other time in history. These particular three alliances of LGBTQ, feminism and atheism, they're all laying in bed with each other, for want of a better word. An alliance which has been unparalleled, unheralded in human history, because they're trying to change the very construct of what God has revealed in divinely revealed revelation, and also what has been commonly understood in terms of human ethics and morality. So this is being turned upside down. So as we've commonly said on these shows, it's just a matter of time before, if you collect your child in 10 years from school, that his friend will be, or her friend will be collected by two mothers who are both lesbians, who've got a surrogate child, or two fathers who may be both gay, homosexual, who have now got legal rights to a child who's been born through surrogacy, as an example. And these are type of situations that our humanity is unfolding within. So this is contrary to what God has revealed, you see, to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed. This is contrary. So it may sound all, futuristic and all, pretty damning, but it's not. This is the case. This is where societies are all leading to the destruction of society, contrary to how God wants us to lead our lives. The powers that be, led by the Zionists, because don't forget, let's just observe one thing. The one who was rejected by Allah is Shaitan. Who are those who were rejected as people by Allah? We all know this, don't we? There's no, we can spell it out. We all know who were the rejected by Allah was Shaitan. Who were the rejected? We should all come out and unilaterally make comments on the chat. Which people ignored Allah's law? It's mentioned in the Bible, it's mentioned in the Quran. Again and again, Allah sent them revelation. They rejected it. They rebelled. So these are the people who become rejected then. They become rejected. These are the people who Shaitan has a common denominator with. And these are the ones who will seek to propel mankind astray from worshipping God. But Allah says they plot and plan, but Allah is the biggest plotter and planner. So this is where it's all spiraling towards this end time conclusion. And like I said, anyone who thinks this is fanciful, robotic, conspiratorial, nothing better than to do type of time wasting. In fact, it's not. These are all things which are spiraling towards this system of living which is unprecedented in human history, and I think people know it. The thing about it now is, with the advent of social media, such institutions as what we're doing, podcasts and live shows, more and more people are fed up with being told how or what is morality to them. LGBTQ being forced down our throats in even sporting events. But things such as the Qatar World Cup, in which more and more people are saying I've recently sent Brother Muhammad an article which states that there have been no arrests, no violence, no drunkenly or disorderly behavior, no violence in general at this Qatar World Cup. No one's spoken about the success that the World Cup has had as a result of implementation of certain Islamic values, which, although Qatar is not, the best Islamic example, as there is no country which is,
in the utopian Islamic way of living. However, you've seen the benefit of non-alcohol compliance at the World Cup, and it's gone off in such a way that we haven't had these issues. There've been even the British police, who have been in tandem with the Qatari authorities, have amazingly stated there's been no arrests at this World Cup. Well, this is absolutely mind-blowing to think. So Islam now, it's been presented, and people are seeing through the nonsense which has been diatribed by the media, and the compulsion, the interest towards it is becoming more and more. And what these shows are all about, essentially, to show that Islam is the superior way of life. Islam is the way to go, the way to live, and the end victory will be with Allah and the ones who represent Allah. But there will be a test in between, and we are living in those tests, and those tests are set to accelerate in a very, very quick way.
MashaAllah, you hit on a very important topic, and I'm sure everybody can actually agree to what you mentioned regarding the Qatar World Cup. I think it opened a lot of eyes, and the focus has been on the Arab world, and I think it has shown the world that the misunderstanding, the bigotry from the West regarding the Arab world and the Muslims in general. I feel, I'm sure the audience can agree to what I'm saying. I think the Qatar World Cup has been a great success. Not the fact that the good football that's been playing, but the spirit of how the fans have been interacting with each other, and all the various different brothers and sisters who have gone over there to give dawah. And the figures are gone up to maybe 600-700 people, which I get information regarding on Twitter with some of the brothers. There's a brother called Jamal from Old People of the Book, who's actually living in Qatar, and he's part of the network. He mentions to me that hundreds of people have accepted Islam from around the world, brothers and sisters. And the way they actually get people involved in dawah is what they do. They have somebody wearing the traditional Arab clothes, and they just say to the visitors, do you fancy putting the headscarf on or a thorban? And from there they start talking to them about the culture of being a Muslim, and then slowly talk about Islam and and the Tawheed and so forth. And this is the way the dawah is being done. Nothing is being pressurized. There's no like speaker's corner type of dawah going on there whatsoever. And brothers and sisters, we have to think about this situation. For over 30 years, or maybe plus, that the media have given a narrative that the Arab and the Muslims are backward, that we are savages, we are terrorists. Brother Mustafa, I'm sure you can fully agree with what I'm going to say now, is that for many years, the Muslim world has been portrayed as somewhere unsafe, uncivilized. All they want to do is destroy the Western and the non-Muslims' lifestyle. All they want to do is implement Sharia and stuff like this. And the effect that the Qatar World Cup has had on the world, I know there's certain media outlets, and BBC is one of them, has been exposed big time in their negative behavior regarding the Qatar World Cup. I remember in the first couple of games, the opening group stage games, every time the program started, the first thing that they will talk about are the human rights in Qatar, or the One Love armband and so forth. So brothers and sisters, I've put the link in the chat. Feel free to come on. I really would like to have some non-Muslims also joining on the panel. And this is your chance to come on and share your thoughts. And if you've got any questions to our brother Mustafa, feel free to put them forward. So I have put the link in the chat. Feel free to come on. Thank you so much. Brother Mustafa, as for me personally, I think the World Cup in Qatar has really benefited the Muslims a lot, and it has opened so many eyes. What's your take on that, my brother?
Yes, my brother Muhammad. Yes, we've discussed this, I think, matter in the past as well, and there's no doubt there's been some many positivities in terms of the Qatar World Cup, particularly to show that, the point I just made mention, that the fact that there have been no arrests, no violence, no tensions amongst a vast array of international communities which have congregated within a relatively small vicinity within Doha, with majority of the World Cup matches took place, and it was shown to be a unique experience in that sense. And the fact that we've got brothers who already reside in Qatar and they've testified that there have been hundreds of shahadas, the very resonation of the truth of Islam has been propelled. And I do know many brothers who are very well known within the dawah, circles, have gone to Qatar for this particular purpose, to do dawah. And there's one brother, which I don't think there's any harm mentioning, with brother Ijaz Ahmed, who is very much very well known in Muslim Christian dialogue. He went there as well, and I've seen posts that he sent in which he's been having discussion with Christian missionaries who also went for this purpose. So alhamdulillah, it's been a great success on many fronts. However, because obviously Qatar is not the what you call epitome of a correct Islamic setup, there are things that just show to you how the Dajjal system has even infiltrated Qatar. And I've made a reference of that on the previous to show, for example, if people have been observing the football matches very, very carefully, you will see women journalists and photographers who are wearing the hijab, who have been freely associating and in a close vicinity to non-Muslim journalists and photographers as well at this World Cup. I'm sure people would have noticed that. Now, the hula bala has been over LGBTQ issue, but on the blind side, which people may not be so much aware of, is the fact that this association of Muslim women who are still scarfed and so forth, but they've been actively amalgamating and associating with non-Muslim journalists from different countries at this World Cup. That's been very clear from the images shown. So you can see even there are games behind the scenes in order for Qatar, for example, to slowly come under the grip of this Dajjal system by throwing away a lot of the Islamic institutions of segregation between the sexes. But you've seen that's been peeled away at this World Cup for those who are very, very observant. It's been surprising to me to see even hijabi women in football stadiums standing next to Muslim supporters and and exalting at these venues, exalting opposition teams. And even in this match which took place between Morocco and France, if you observe very carefully, when both the teams were coming out, there was a young adolescent Muslim girl who must have been about 12, 13, but you can see that she was going into her adolescent years. She was holding hands with a French football player by the name of Antoine Griezmann. It was just to break down a barrier that a Muslim girl can hold hands with a non-Muslim male. Just subliminal types of messages like that were being put forward. So this is what you call.
The one thing that I really found profound before you're talking about France and Morocco yesterday, and I think Morocco did fantastic. I think they played throughout the World Cup. They played very good. And due to the lack of maybe experience in a high-profile match, they lost. But I actually think they actually won. They won so many hearts and minds of so many people around the world. And now they got on Saturday they've got a possibility of coming third and getting like a bronze medal of the World Cup. So they're going to play Croatia on Saturday, and the final will be on Sunday. But nevertheless, I think what I found amazing is how the Moroccan players were interacting with some of the French African-born players. I don't know if you noticed that. There were so many handshakes and hugs. There's so much mutual respect, because I think they understand how much this World Cup means when it comes to culture. Majority of the French players, listen now, brothers and sisters, is like, I know Sunak now is trying to, depromatize or bring back the levels of, take back the levels of immigration and so forth. But the French players, majority of them are probably second generation immigrants, and it's quite alarming that that you saw this Arab or Moroccan African country interact really well with the African players playing for France, and that was very beautiful to see. We've got a guest backstage. Before we get to our guest, there was a question for you, Brother Mustafa. If you don't mind just reading that out and maybe answering it, if you don't mind, briefly.
So, bro, I'm just speaking to you from my phone, so I can't really see that clearly. If you'd like to read it out, then I'll attempt to answer it.
Okay, Brother Mustafa, I don't know if I'd agree that this is unprecedented. I believe that history is repeating itself just under the guise or cloaks of new ideologies. Would you agree?
So when I make mention, the brother who has posed this question, it's unprecedented.
Ibn Adam. Brother Ibn Adam asked this question, yeah.
Okay, so Brother Ibn Adam, when I make mention it's unprecedented, I mean it's unprecedented in the sense that these anti-God elements have come into alliance together simultaneously, and they are now in positions of authority. So LGBTQ, feminism and atheism, these people have come into positions of authority simultaneously and have come into an alliance. That is what is different, unlike any other time in history, and hence it is unprecedented. I hope that's made the matter clear. So although we have had historically such institutions at work, the thing now which is so different is that these people are all simultaneously in an alliance together. So it's like a how can you call it? It's like a get together of people of a particular purpose who see benefits between themselves to form an alliance to go against a status quo. So the status quo would have been, the implementation of what God has revealed. So God has given authority to the man; they're determined to give it to the woman. God has forbidden LGBTQ; they are propelling LGBTQ. They are propelling atheism, which is obviously contrary to what Allah has revealed through history. There's always been societies who've always believed in the Creator. So when I make mention unprecedented, the reason why I'm using this word is because these people are all amalgamated together in an alliance to lead mankind astray, to show, or in effect, this animosity and this anger they have is towards God, towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to remember this, you see. That's why they're seeking to propel mankind into this very notion, to this very vacuum of what Allah has revealed. We are not going to implement it. We are going to empower those who are contrary to what Allah has ordained. Hope that answers the question. So in the Quran, for example, it states that the believing women are obedient to Allah and by proxy to their husbands. In the Bible, we have a similar verse which states that the head of woman is man, the head of man is Christ, the head of Christ is God. You see how these two major religions of the world propose that the man is in authority, but the powers that be, they are determined to give the woman the authority, and we've discussed this in depth in previous shows. And then you look at other such matters such as atheism. By conservative estimates, at least 50% of the MPs in the UK, the members of parliament who govern the country, they are atheists. This wasn't the case going back a generation. And similarly, of course, LGBTQ, by conservative estimates, 30 to 40% of British MPs are of the same sex persuasion. It's no wonder they've come into power simultaneously as a gang, you see. They're like one gang. And on the opposite spectrum are those who hold on to the values ordained by Allah through the various religious scriptures of the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran. And this is on one side of the spectrum. This is why whenever I speak, I like to try to involve the Christians as well, because of these end time scenarios that are due to take place in the precipice for the coming of the Dajjal, which is what this system is spiraling towards. So I hope that answers the question.
MashaAllah. Well put, Brother Mustafa. Backstage, we got our first caller, and Sister Parina, I'm going to put you on now. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Parina. Where are you calling from? Please introduce yourself.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa
Brother, I
alaikum
spoke to you
salam.
last stream. I'm from the US, remember?
Yeah, I do remember. Yes, no, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think there's an important factor which you I think should talk about is, Brother Mustafa. Do you know about the classification they have done for like of the generations, like generation baby boomer, and then it is Gen X, and then Gen Z, and then Gen Alpha?
Yeah, I'm slightly aware of these different classifications that I think you made mention on the previous show. Yes.
Yes, and like I was doing my research on this, and what I found is they are working on Gen Z and Gen Alpha now. They're not worried about us because they know that we won't accept it. So whatever we are talking is like only appealing to our generation. So that what they have written in their like in their so what I saw is like Gen Z is born in the system of like cell phones and internet, so they don't understand. The oldest Gen Z today is 25 years old. So anybody younger than that, they don't understand the difference between the virtual relationship and the real relationship, so they seamlessly go back and forth in this. So it will be very easy to kind of catch them and put them in pods, and and have more restricted lifestyle, and for them this LGBT, all these things are more appealing. So if you don't teach your children at home about Islam, because they have again this indoctrination system from schools, so parents have a lot of responsibility. So I think because I think you speak well, so if you can make a stream on this, it would be great. So I'm just trying to give you some points so that maybe you can work on it.
That's very much appreciated. Thank you for those words of encouragement. I mean, in essence, what you're saying is quite correct. The elder generation, the generation who have perhaps lived in the UK from expat, parentage, who came over to the Western countries going back a couple of generations ago. These, implementing the way that the powers that be want us to think is going to be pretty difficult for our generation. But for the new generation, as you've made mention, sister, it's very, very clear that they'll find it easier to incorporate their values upon these younger generations. So in schools here in the UK, for example, in primary and secondary schools, you're being taught about LGBTQ at a young age. The fact that what is the issue with two people, consenting adults who love each other and want to, involve themselves personally. That's not the concern of anyone else. So these are the types of things that which have been fundamentally encroached amongst the youth. And as you said, this is a digital age, so this is a different type of mentality and different type of thinking that people are progressing towards. And this is where the system or the powers that be are singularly trying to concentrate on this younger generation, so they will not be aware of the universal moralities which have been consistent through history. So as a result of this particular understanding, it will be easier to mind control and to manipulate the thinking patterns and the processes in this liberal age of the youth. And it's a very valid point that it's extremely important that for Muslims in particular, and for Christians, and for people who share these common values, is to teach their children without any fear or apprehension of, these are universal laws that we follow, which have been augmented within a coherence of philosophy, of reasoning, of understanding, of religiosity, of social networking. That this is how God has expected us to live through history. But now we're in the phase of history now, which is unlike any other time, you see. Hence why we all need to understand that some of the examples that I've given in relation to, it's only a matter of time before the traditional nuclear family will be imploded. Your child or your children's children will be friends with those who don't have a mother or who don't have a father. They've got two fathers or two mothers. Yeah, it sounds what you call futuristic and very much something which was conspiratorial. However, this is the reality of things. Things such as surrogacy are on the increase. The fact that in Britain, in the law of this country, if a child is put up for adoption or for fostering, you cannot legally the child can legally be placed into the care of a same-sex couple, like, for example, a homosexual relationship between two men. They can actually, and if they're married to each other, the two men, they can apply for a child to be taken into care. So these are some of the things that we're encountering, which is just a matter of time before this becomes the norm within our societies. And it's already becoming the norm in our societies. Here, LGBTQ is pushed to such an extent that it's becoming more and more normal. Going back a generation, you couldn't imagine two men holding hands with each other, walking down the road and kissing each other. Now it's very common. Similarly with two women who are doing the same thing. So our universal moralities are changing upside down. And this, the real concern here is within this LGBTQ movement, the plus sign here in the UK is called LGBTQ plus. Plus indicates what is to happen in the future. And these things are on the horizon, where things such as incestual relationships will become legalized, because the argument going back a generation or two ago, where homosexuality was illegal in the UK, but that when they repealed the Homosexual Act in 1968, which then was, before that, it was a criminal offence for two men to get up to the no good that they would, but they repealed that act. So the consensus then was that no one's business if two consenting adults have a physical relationship with each other. That's no concern of anyone else. The same thing is now going to be propagated about incestual relationships. If two siblings who are over the age of 18 who are in love with each other and they're not harming anyone else, that is the same indication as the homosexual argument given as well. So this is the next thing on the horizon, you see. This is the next, and this is just a matter of time. In the UK, who would have thought, going back into the mid to early 60s, that being homosexual or having an LGBTQ disposition would be the common norm within society? Well, it's happened now. If you rewind the clock back 50 years, you wouldn't have even imagined it. Now it's the norm. In 50 years' time, what is being seen as not the norm, i.e. incest, that will become the norm. Bestiality, necrophilia. So many things are going to happen, and that is the plus sign within the LGBTQ. So our very moral fabric of what we were created for, the purpose of our creator, that will be dissolved. And hence, this is people have to understand, this will be the human low that we will be at before this Dajjal system will then meet its end with the arrivals of Imam Mahdi, of the coming of the Dajjal, and of course the eventual success of Isa alayhi salam. See, we're all spiraling towards that. And if anyone thinks this is just fanciful talk, well, we can see history developing in this stage. And for Muslims, we can be super confident that our eschatology is bang on, it's spot on, because these are events foretold within our hadiths. Our hadiths mention the empowerment of women to the extent that they will supersede the man. This is happening in this country. If you look at LGBTQ, this has also been mentioned. If you look at atheism, this has also been mentioned in graphic detail as well. So for Christians in particular, if you want to know when Christ is returning, investigate our eschatology. And just if you're living in the West in particular, we live in the UK, myself in southern England, Brother Muhammad in the Midlands, we're seeing it day by day, the very change of our societies, and this is all spiraling towards that. So have no doubt about that whatsoever.
I got one more point to say. I see that the mothers, they're very comfortable giving their cell phones to their kids. I've seen a baby of 3 months, watching cartoon, and the baby knows. It just keeps quiet when, and the mothers and the parents are very happy. They think the baby understands this. So they're so laid back on this. So it's really hurting, because when you understand what's going on, And the babies now, like you see, the kids are more like attached to their online friends than their own siblings who are living with them, their own parents, and then there's a factor of mannerism. Like I'm seeing, like in schools they don't teach manners like before. If you see Islam, like the the foundation, one of the foundations of Islamic etiquette is manners, like how you respect others, how you respect your elders. Like there's no Islam without manners. So this is one thing. And I think the whole thing starts from here. Like they had introduced this not respecting your teachers, like maybe about 20 years ago in schools in West. And it's kind of like now going across the world. And almost all the kids, even I have my nieces living in Middle East. And I'm hearing from my mom, like she was saying, I was telling my mom about this Gen Z thing and all that. She was saying your niece will die if internet one day, like there's a blackout or something. She was like, your niece will die. She lives in Middle East, without internet. So you can imagine how much how serious it is. And like I was reading a research about it's like I've done this research quite some time back, so I don't have the references. So there was a scholar who was saying that Prophet Lut alayhi salam, it was the only nation Allah has destroyed, like, or like in a different way, like, because this behavior, like he was the only prophet who was surrounded by his people, and they were kind of like break into his house, so this is the nature of this LGBT people. They will, and they have so many, like, there's a song from California 10 years ago that the gays had uploaded, and they made like, we will be after your kids or something like that. I don't remember the wordings of that. I mean, I don't remember the lyrics of that song, but it's still there on YouTube. So they said they will come after your kids. So that's how they are. Like this is a very adamant, very arrogant, and they don't give up, and they kind of like what they believe. They will come after you. Like if you see other prophets who are doing kufr or shirk, they were making fun of the prophets, and they were like minding their own business. But it was not like how Prophet Lut alayhi salam was chased, like they were even after the angels, so we really have to educate our kids at a young age, because if we don't, then they will for sure. So it's the first impression is the best impression. So we have to I don't know, but we have to kind of like come up with a plan individually in every house, and and make a group of like-minded people, and then kind of educate, so maybe you'll have to do a stream on this too, because I think like there's a lot of work to do. That's what I'm thinking.
See, I had an idea. I mean, an idea would be, for example, here in the UK, in London, and even where Brother Muhammad is in Coventry, there's many, mashallah, we've got many Muslims, many Muslim schools. So Islam is very much there in the open eyes of the general public.
But the
So
schools will be, I'm
I
sorry, I'm
had,
cutting off. The schools will be like regulated by the authority,
yeah, but the way around it, I was thinking in terms of what we can do as individuals, and I've proposed these ideas to other individuals, and it's just a matter of a couple of people feeling passionate about these things and taking a step. So, a good idea I had would be that in schools, for example, primary school level, secondary school level, children are being taught about LGBTQ in considerable depth, and the evil of what that inculcates, and for parents who are oblivious to these facts, who won't really discuss how the child's day went at school, or to know what they've been taught, then this will just become the norm. So my idea would be to write something to parents and distribute such material to them outside schools. Just say in London, for an example, where many schools are just a vast majority of pupils are Muslims. So, or even when we're talking about non-Muslims, we can hand out certain leaflets which I can dictate, which I have dictated. And in fact, one brother in Melbourne, Australia, did do what I asked him to do. When I was speaking to him, having met him on a social app, when I dictated a letter to him to distribute information in regards to what children are being taught at school throughout the English-speaking world about same-sex education, and what do they think about it. So it was a very concisely and clearly worded letter which he distributed outside to schools in Melbourne, Australia, and I think he got a very positive reaction from parents. So in London, for example, or wherever you may be, then these are certain acts you can do. You can write down, or I can dictate a letter which you can just print out with 500, for example, 500 A4 sheets of paper, print them out and distribute them to parents outside schools when they collect their children. And these are small things that we can do, which will make even parents think, what are our children being taught? Are they being taught about same-sex education? Are you for it? Are you against it? We need to actively engage and do these small things on an individual basis in order to appeal to the general public. Because for us ordinary laymen, that's all we can do, you see, in effect. But these are certain things that you can do just by brainstorming and just by thinking about such options. And I think this one in particular, to really start conversations and to make parents more aware and that this is a perfect opportunity. Go outside schools, distribute them at the end of school. There may be up to hundreds of children who attend a primary or secondary school, and give this to their parents. Particularly primary school at a young age, where these anti-God forces are trying to mobilize the thinking pattern of the youth. These are types of things that their parents need to be aware of. So next day, you never know. Parents may come together, perform a little, or have a little committee together to speak to their schools about what the children are being taught in regards to these matters. Because if we don't do anything about it, then it will just go full steam ahead.
Yeah, like I used to tell my friend, they're from Tajikistan, that there's LGBT things going on in school, and she never understood. She was like, "No, you're being too concerned," and blah blah blah. And one day her son came crying, saying, "I don't want to be a girl." Okay, then she came running to me. Then I said, "Yes, I told you this is happening," and then that's when she woke up. I used to tell her, like, and I think these are little things, but it makes a big difference. Like we should not buy rainbow toys, rainbow T-shirts. Then they're promoting the unicorn is totally linked to LGBT plus, Q plus or whatever. So these are little things, but this have a big impact because your child is attached to unicorn, and unicorn is a tool for LGBT. So we have to and it's really very difficult. Like I was trying to buy a gift for my nieces, and I went to maybe 10 stores just to get a T-shirt without unicorn. So it's quite difficult, and so we have to go out of our way to do these things, so that and try to detach kids from one of my nieces. She's just 4 years old, and she's very much fond of unicorn, and I told my sister-in-law that you should stop this, and she said, "I know about it, and your own brother is having problem, like he's not understanding this." So there's quite a lot of job in your own family, let alone outside your family. So we have to start from our family, I think.
Alhamdulillah, excellent. We've got another guest speaker joining us now, Sister Halima. Assalamu alaikum, sister. Can you just introduce yourself briefly?
Oh, assalamu alaikum, walaikum assalam, brother. How are you? Yeah, I'm Halima. I just got a YouTube channel and just started spreading some information about Speakers Corner and current events.
Yeah, great. You mentioned Speakers Corner. Where were you? When was the last time you've been to Speakers Corner?
Brother Mohammed, we've spoken already on Oxadawa, I remember.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right, okay. My memory is not the best, unfortunately. I've been so busy with stuff, and yeah. But alhamdulillah, I'm planning to go to Speakers Corner this Sunday for a short period of time. I've got some things to do in London, and then I'll probably just pop in Speakers Corner and get some footage. But alhamdulillah, what do you think to the topic so far?
I think it's brilliant. It's a very important topic, raising awareness for us Muslims, especially around the current events on the forces that are in play on dividing us and dumbing our nations down. And interesting part, the sister was talking about the whole LGBT being taught at school, and I just recently went on. I don't know if anybody knows Jacko Radio. I think maybe Brother Mustafa, if you remember, Jacko Radio is Catholic, and Christian Catholic, but he was on my live stream in the comment section usually, and he watches a lot of Christian Prince, and they were speaking about grooming gangs because obviously they're part of far right. They like sport Tom Robinson and everything. So, and I said this is old, and they're bringing it back up again. It's already been in all the horrible people are already in prison and it's been on the news and everywhere. But when I did a quick research on what's happening on the other side of the fence, like just say for instance, is it okay to talk on this topic? Because if I just say anything, just let me know.
No, carry on. Feel free. Alhamdulillah.
So so basically, brother, it's like I was looking at pedophilia on the from white people. Like, why is it that the browns are always so highlighted and these people are Pakistani, etc.? Whenever we see, obviously we're smaller in population as well. When I see in our local paper in Oxford Mail, often there'll be one arrested, sent back to prison. So I was thinking, like, do a little research and just like click and see how many there are in our local newspaper. And this article came up and it said BBC. One second. Apparently, this group was trying to go mainstream, and let me just get. If you search it up, because I'm on my phone right now, right? It's the BBC news. How did the pro-paedophile group PIE exist openly for 10 years? And here it says former KGB spy and PIE member Jeffrey Prime and chairman Tom O'Carroll. So this PIE is called Pedophile Information Exchange. And I went on Jack's live stream a couple of days ago, and it seemed like, I wouldn't say they were apologetic, but they weren't addressing their own community. And here it's quite scary. There's a little clip, a video on here, 3 minutes and 35 in the news article, which they reference another website. Basically, what they were trying to do is normalize adult and child relationships, and that is why through this whole LGBT, because Brother Mustafa once said that it's got plus on the end, plus, and they're going to be including other things in it. So this is part of the next plan. And I used to say to Raj, Raj Speaks Corner, he always used to go on about grooming. And I said, this guy is going to be on the front line, for telling people to normalize pedophilia as well. I can tell, because this is like, first it's like haram relationship. This country used to be quite Christian before, they used to frown upon women having babies outside of marriage, and this is not even that long ago. It's probably about 40 years ago, if I can remember. But slowly you've got so many relationships outside of marriage. Then you had introduction of this LGBT, and then you're thinking of what's next.
It's crazy you say that. This article was in 2014.
That's right.
You mentioned, and is a former KGB spy and a member called Jeffrey Prime, and the chairman of this group was Tom O'Carroll. And they had their meetings in the late 70s and early 80s, and they were pro gay rights, and they wanted to back a motion of you mentioned the P word, and I really don't want to mention it because I don't like mentioning it, so forgive me about that. But you understand what I'm saying. They tried to promote it.
I didn't know if I should use that word, but sorry.
Yeah, I just find it disturbing. So I don't like, when you have children and you don't want to, you know what I mean? You just don't want to mention it sometimes. But these despicable people were pushing the notion forward that they should make it law, that they should be able to have relations with young people, with young children. And this group, just seemed to exist for such a long time. So, Brother Mustafa, this is very interesting what the sister has just mentioned here. Have you read this article, my brother?
No, I haven't, brother. I haven't seen this particular article, no.
So, this journalist, he actually came out with this report, Christian Vollmer. He kind of reported that there were 50-year-old men wanting to have relationships with children as young as 5, and they it's just despicable, brothers. I'm really sorry and sisters about this, but they were trying to say that it's we're trying to liberate the children, that we're trying to empower the children, and for them to enjoy these type of relationships, not the adults but the children themselves at the age of 5. It's quite shocking, guys. But yeah, this is.
Well, we can just look no further back than the time of, one of the late prime ministers of this country, Ted Heath, who served as prime minister between 1970 and 74. This guy, he was celibate throughout his whole life, didn't get married, or didn't have any kids. But, it was later established that, he was implicated in, getting children in his retreat for sexual pleasure. This was between 1970 and 1974 when he was the prime minister. And, often people of, high politicians and so forth, they've, historically been caught with this, evil deed of the P word, as no one wants to mention it. So, this has become historical. There was a time where famous gangsters here in London, they're known as the Cray twins. I'm not sure if you two are aware of them, but they, spread a bit of anarchy here in East London in the 60s, and they would facilitate. One of these gangsters was gay as well, and he would facilitate eminent British ministers in getting young children or youngsters to them for sexual pleasure. There's a guy called Lord Booth, who was a prominent minister within the British government in the 60s, and he would these gangsters would get young children to give them sexual pleasure to these British politicians. So historically, this has always been the case, and this was always covered up by the authorities and by the police, you see, because the police, in effect, themselves, who appear to, be trying to uphold the law, when it comes to these people of a higher disposition, then, they will turn a blind eye because they've got so many contrary interests at stake that they can't approach these people who would commit these particular acts. So, this is the history of lots of politicians within this country as well. So it doesn't surprise me at all what you've just made mention.
Yeah, brother.
Go ahead, Sister Lima. Sorry, carry on. I've put the link in the chat now, the article itself. I don't know if it's come up on our channel, but I have put it on Consider This TV network. It's going, this show is going live on 2 other channels. You got Covff Islamic channel and Consider This TV network, which is run by Kenny Boma. But yeah, thinking of Kenny Boma, he's my guest for tomorrow. 6 p.m. UK time. He'll be my guest and he'll be under the spotlight. And again, we'll be talking about some of the things that we've spoken about today. And brothers and sisters, just to let you know that our brother Kenny Boma has written various books on this particular topic. And you can get them on Amazon. Just look for just type in Kenny Boma on Amazon and you'll get his selection of books that he's actually authored. Sorry, Sister Halima, carry on.
Yeah, bro, no problem, because it links into what Kenny's doing as well. You see, Kenny's talking about the whole LGBT movement as well in his book. And in this article that you've pinned for BBC, if you maybe put it in this chat as well, where the audience is, they can see there's a small video clip about 3 minutes and 34 seconds. If they listen to that, if you listen to it, they refer to like trying to educate the children. They said it literally word for word, like they're trying to educate the children into this act, this sort of basically bringing sex education into schools and bring homosexuality into it where it wasn't there before. Because Brother Mustafa, if you can remember, like Michael Gove introduced it, didn't he, in 2014 or after the Birmingham Trojan Horse. And you'll see, like, this video was in the 70s, wasn't it? This news article, or
yeah, it was written in the 1970s, but then it was produced by the newspaper in 2014. And these despicable, disgusting people
Yeah.
actually had like an application form where you could actually join this organization for £4. So you can be a part of this this vile, I
Yeah.
don't know, what can I say, disgusting people, and this was able to continue for a long time. And as Brother Mustafa just mentioned right now, even to this day, we have these type of peoples. They have private islands. They're very well off, and they just recently with the Twitter files, just like with Hunter Biden, he has been exposed as somebody who's involved in these type of disgusting behaviors. So yeah, even to this day, this thing happens, and it's just subhanallah. And these people are God. They don't fear God at all. That, like Brother Mustafa said, majority of them are atheists. They don't think there's going to be a judgment. They don't think they're going to be held for account for what they do. But it is shocking. And then we, as the West, point fingers at everybody else, saying that it's just the hypocrisy is just that it's it's shocking. It really is. Go ahead.
Yes, bro. Yeah. Yeah, I'll let Brother Mustafa speak as well on this. But if you look at Mohammed Hijab on Sapien Institute just yesterday, he made a live stream on the age of our Mother Aisha radiallahu anha, and how the burden of proof is on those who say that this was an act that marrying our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was actually harming her, because it's usually Christians and atheists that are saying this right now, and both of them don't have a leg to stand on. If you look at where they get their morality from, and where the like Jesus approved of the Old Testament, so what's written in the Old Testament, the Talmud, about children. Yeah, yes, it's mad.
So, brothers and sisters, we're going to have a short break, and hopefully give us about 30 seconds or so. And I just want to remind the brothers and sisters to don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and please continue to support the Dawah and the channel. Please like and subscribe, and thank you for your support, brothers and sisters. So hopefully, inshallah, this Sunday I'll be at Speaker's Corner for a short while, and I'll try to get some footage. Recently, there's been some new faces at Speaker's Corner. There's been one Somalian brother. I think he's Somalian. I think he's had some debates, very interesting debates. So I will try to get some of his footage. I've also asked and reached out to Brother Muhammad Ali and Hamza. Hamza, not Hamza from Hamza's Den, but another Hamza. He's got a YouTube channel, and I've kind of reached out to them to get him onto a podcast. Also, today I contacted Brother Maliki Click, and hopefully I'm planning to do a stream with him, inshallah, maybe this weekend. Barakallah fikum. Brother Mustafa, Sister Halima, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to mention, Brother Muhammad, if you want to get Hamza from Hamza's Den onto your show for a podcast, I'll have a word with him if you're interested in getting him on your show.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having Brother Hamza. I've actually, I'm a member to his channel, Brother Hamza. But I was on about another Hamza. I think he's the African brother or a Jamaican brother. He normally bees with another brother. I think his name's
Rayhan, Brother Rayhan.
Rayhan, yes.
Yeah, Brother Hamza's got his own YouTube channel, and he's been attending Speaker's Corner for a number of years, and he often has good discussions with Christians. So he's pretty good as well, and so is Brother Rayhan as well, who usually they discuss together normally with Christians.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. He's very, very nice, well-mannered individual. God willing, like I said, I'll try my best to get to Speaker's Corner, even if it's for an hour or 2 hours. I know a lot of the brothers. Brother Hamza has gone to Qatar, and there's some good pictures of them in the stadium watching the Morocco and France game. So, mashallah, they are, they are there. Yes, Sister Salika, I'm hoping to do a stream with Brother Maliki Click very soon. Alhamdulillah. So, Sister Halima, is there anything else you want to add?
Just one more thing. There's a new shahada we had in Qatar with Dr. Zakir Naik. He's a black brother, but I don't know. I always thought he was already Muslim, and then once I saw him do content as a Christian, so I was getting a bit confused. And maybe I was thinking.
I think he's named something called the Thinker. Yes, he's a young. I think he's from South Africa or he's African descent. I think he was a Christian who used to review debates with Ahmed Didat and some of the old debates. And then he became like a bit of a YouTuber, and he realized that alhamdulillah, and he's being guided to Islam. And this is the beauty of streams like this, and the legacy that the late Ahmed Didat, may Allah be pleased with him, has left behind a legacy. And I always mention to our brother Hamza from Hamza's Den, I actually feel is a next type of individual who's carried that type of lantern, because I love the way Brother Hamza gives his dawah. He's straight to the point. I know some people find him a very aggressive and upfront, but I actually like the way he approaches the debates, if that makes any sense. He doesn't like, cutting corners. He gets straight to the point.
I said that to him today on his stream. I guess it's like the Welsh version of Dr. Zakir Naik.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, brother, Jazakallah khairan for letting me on. Inshallah,
You're welcome.
Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, rahmatullah, barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Brother Mustafa, Jazakallah khair for joining me today. We got to wrap it up pretty soon. It's getting late. It's getting up to 10 p.m. here, UK. Brother Mustafa, have you got anything planned?
Yeah, I just have to say, Brother Muhammad, for people, whoever's listening on in the audience, about some of these topics that we've spoken about today, and what can we do as people. I've made this appeal on other shows before and on other platforms. What can we do to stop the spread of these very concerning things, such as the imposition of LGBTQ? And we've spoken about this topic a lot on this show, but it's been forced down upon us. And because we don't have no power, and the powers that be, who are these esoteric people who are determined to push us away from our religion, it's very important for us to understand this and see what can we do as individuals. And as we've discussed, the youth is the main target of these entities who are against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my idea would be to, and if anybody's interested, to perhaps leave their email addresses on the chat. So as I've said, I've done this before to a brother who I met on a different social media platform, where I dictated a letter where he was able to distribute it outside a primary school in Australia. And he had a very good reception to it in terms of the parents not even knowing what their kids are being taught at school, such as the busyness of life. So if anyone's interested in perhaps going to a primary school, or if you're a parent in any capacity where you can distribute these sheets of paper, which essentially all that will be required is for you to print out 500 of these sheets of a letter, which should only be 1 page, but it will highlight in effect raising concern for parents as to what their children are being taught about in school, about in terms of these same-sex relationships. And if we can get parents to really get on board in terms of them uniting together to put pressure on their schools for them to be aware as to what their children are being taught. And if we can, get these pressure groups going, this will be a method in which, we can raise the stakes in terms of making this a hot topic for people to discuss, particularly for parents. So
I mean, I mean, strongly suggest this would be an excellent little brainstorming session. You know, like I said, in the areas that we live in, Brother Muhammad in Coventry and myself in London, that we can go to schools, distribute it out after school, and there's no harm in that whatsoever, and give it to parents. You don't have to give it to children; simply give it to parents, and they can read it, and then, you know, out of interest, find out what you've been taught at school today. And just like the early example that one of the people who came on, the sister who came on, she made mention of the fact that her sister-in-law was shocked to see that, you know, they speak about such things where the child comes home crying, and then, you know, so imagine the reaction of parents who still want their children to be, you know, innocent in many ways. They don't want to have to relay all these things which are, you know, personal to parents who may not feel very comfortable discussing these things. And that's the innocence of youth as well. I mean, what's happened to the innocence of youth? So, I mean, I would suggest, Brother Muhammad, on your side as well, this is an excellent idea that I've had. As we know, we've got many Muslim schools here in where we are located, and doing such an act would be very, very precise. You know, you can just wear a face mask, which is totally acceptable today due to COVID. You know, and just put a cap on your head if you don't want to be highlighting who you are, and just distribute it outside primary schools to parents when they collect their kids from school. You know, this will really make them think. Most parents will take, you know, a distribution of something from someone who's doing it outside of a school, and they'll read it. You know, many parents walk to school or walk their children back home. Not everyone drives their kids to school, and this is a fantastic idea, brother. It just needs a bit of, you know, determination from an individual to feel passionate that what can we do? You know, when we present ourselves in front of Allah Azza wa Jal on the Day of Judgment, and He will say to us, right, you know that in your schools they were teaching these disgusting things for future generations and for your generation. What did you do to counter it? Or were you just a sheep who was too scared to speak up and let these things develop? You know, you can at least make a claim that, you know, I did whatever was within my capacity, and I can't think of anything more safer and more within the law to do something as such, and to, you know, really ignite people. And if you've got people who feel the same persuasion as you, who, you know, feel just as passionately about these topics, then you can get groups of friends to do the same thing, and, you know, spread out and, you know, distribute such letters which I've dictated, as I mentioned, to the brother in Melbourne, Australia. So this is you know, something we can do on an individualistic basis, just like when brothers make efforts to do dawah, whether it's in, you know, shopping centres across the UK or wherever the case may be. An effort is required to do certain things to stop, you know, the imposition of these ungodly elements overtaking us. And, you know, these such streams, if they're listened to in the next 30, 40 years, where we will be, or what that was situation of what the social situation will be, you know, what the world's climate will be, what the world's, you know, political situation will be, we don't know. But the fact is, what we'll have shown that we've done something to whatever minimal capacity that we can, and this is all about the effort that is required.
Oh, well said, Brother Mustafa. Like I just want to remind the brothers and sisters in the audience, tomorrow, 6 p.m., under the spotlight will be Kenny Burma. And as you are fully aware that he has actually spoken quite loudly regarding this particular topic regarding the LGBT. So he'll be my guest tomorrow, 6 p.m. UK time. Brother Mustafa, if you're available, feel free to come on and share your thoughts also on the platform. You're most welcome.
That's very kind of you, brother. And that's exactly what I've just spoken about. Brother Ken has written a book, you know, looking at, you know, the title of his right to disagree with this nonsense which is being spouted out in society, and he's written a book countering the transgender narrative and the LGBTQ narrative. And, you know, he's taken a risk. You know, he fully appreciates he's risking you know, safety for himself even, and perhaps even his family. But at least as he makes it very same point that I've made, that at least he can say to Allah, I did whatever I could in my capacity to, you know, highlight these points. And he's written a book which all Muslims, particularly in the West, in particular, and obviously for non-Muslims as well, to read and to really. He sent me a copy of his book, and it's very excellent, informative reading, very well laid out, and the thinking pattern is very easy for the ordinary layman to understand. And if you're doing this, and you're doing something, you see, for to show that our Creator on Day of Judgment, that we've done something, and he has written this book, and he's taking a risk. He's actually risking, getting these enemies of God, into some sort of action against him. Which, let's face it, is very plausible. It's very. And if anyone thinks I'm joking or I'm just, speaking nonsense, look at Andrew Tate, a world-renowned figure. He speaks about, even before he became Muslim, these conversations that we have, he already was speaking of these even before he knew about Islam. This is the most amazing thing, that these powers that be who control the world, they give you 3 strikes. Essentially, if you go against them, they will outage you in a 3-step format, which we've discussed in previous shows. And this is exactly what we're saying as well. So, but at least you'll have stood up firmly, and the more people you can dissuade from following their course of action, the more we can have unification between all people to stop this vicious tide of an immoral, corrupt, intrinsically system which is being set contrary to what our Creator has revealed. And we want to be on the side of our Creator. Let's face it, he will be our final judge on the Day of Judgment, and that is to whom we will be accountable to. So whatever actions we can do, small and large, and in the case of Brother Kenny Boma, who's done something which is ubiquitous to everyone, so that they can get hold of a copy of this book, and more people will read, the more they will find it appealing and obviously absolutely correct and makes total sense, and the more people will be dissuaded from following the narrative which has been espoused by the powers that be.
Well said, Brother Mustafa. Thank you so much for joining me, and alhamdulillah, I'd like to thank the audience for staying with us and enjoying the show. I'd love to get some feedback from the brothers and sisters. For those brothers and sisters who are watching now, and for those brothers and sisters who probably watch this in the future, any comments, positive or negative, will be much appreciated. Like I said, tomorrow 6 p.m. UK time on my channel Covff, and also Covff Islamic channel, and Consider This TV network. I will be live with Kenny Boma, and he'll be put under the spotlight. I know for a fact, as Brother Mustafa said, he's had a lot of negativity directed towards him regarding the book that he's written. I know that for a fact, and he's mentioned it to me on numerous occasions. So I'd like to thank the guests that we had, the 2 sisters. Thank you so much for joining us. And brothers and sisters, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow, 6 p.m. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.